Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, καλησπέρα. Καλώς ορίσατε στο φακό του Hellenic TV. Σήμερα είναι μεγάλη μας χαρά και τιμή γιατί φιλοξενούμε τον βυρονιστή, συγγραφέα και συλλέκτη Geoffrey Bond, με τον οποίο θα μιλήσουμε για το τελευταίο του βιβλίο Byron's Manor, Birthplace of His Poetry. Καλησπέρα, Geoffrey. Good evening.
Καλησπέρα, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. Geoffrey, we are really happy and honored to have you today with us. And I would like to say that you had such a diverse and accomplished career spanning law, business, heritage, broadcasting, and writing. What initially inspired your passion for heritage and education, and how has this passion shaped your journey?
Well, I grew up with heritage in a way, living in an old house, and my grandparents had an old house. So I was always very interested in history, although I read science, but I never lost my love of history and the Romantic poets. And amongst the Romantic poets, Coleridge, Keats, etc., by far I preferred the poet Byron, because he had much more interesting and adventurous life. And he became part of my heritage portfolio. And in my law practice, I did law that took me into the heritage world. So I became a member of a lot of big committees in London to do with heritage. I had a lot of heritage activities. And that's how my heritage work began and continued. And it's brought me friends all over the world and a huge amount of interest. But above all, I have been very fortunate to purchase 33 years ago this lovely house where Byron lived from 1803 to 1808 when he was at Harrow School and at Cambridge. And after all that time, is this
how your passion started? Is it because you moved, or you had the passion already about Lord Byron?
I had the interest. I don't know about passion. I had the interest, Vasula, before I bought this house. But buying the house, knowing Byron had lived here, that ignited my passion, if you like. And over the years, I've got more and more interested. I've read more and more widely. I suppose you could say I've specialized in Byron's poetry and his life.
So how does it feel to live in Burgage Manor, where the great Philellen, a poet, lived there, and you are actually writing in the same room where he used to write? How does that feel? Do you ever feel connection, some kind of, connection, I will say, to Byron?
Yes, it's a curious feeling to write in the room about a man who you know wrote in that room, because we've got clear evidence that that room, which we call the Byron room and which houses my library, was in fact Byron's bedroom, the room he worked in and spent a lot of his time. And I occasionally sit there at night, sometimes working, thinking, well, I wonder what Lord Byron thinks of this imposter sitting down here writing about him. But I'm sorry to say, I've never seen any ghosts. People often ask me, but we don't have Byron ghost.
But if you happened, let's say, yes, I'm not saying this will happen, but if you had the opportunity to meet Byron today, is it anything that you would have liked to say or ask him?
Well, I suppose I would, if I did meet him. I'm not sure whether I got on with him, but if I did meet him, I think I would ask him why he was so passionate about poetry. Why, from a very early age, he writes so much poetry? Because it wasn't usual amongst his aristocratic members of his class. And Byron was an exception in that regard. And what was it, Lord Byron, that really drove you to write poetry? Was it that you wanted to express yourself in a way that you couldn't otherwise express yourself? Was it because you wanted to be different and you knew you were different because of your serious disability? I think that would be the question I would ask him.
Very good. Very, very interesting. Yes. Now, you wrote a few books, many books, but Byron's Manor offers readers a glimpse into Byron's formative years, if I'm not mistaken, and his life at the Burgage Manor. What do you think were the most pivotal moments of Byron during his time there?
I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Yes. What do you think were the most important moments of Byron's,
Well,
at the
yeah,
Manor?
I think there's a number, but one of the most important moments was one day around 1804 when he crossed the road to meet a lady who lived in the house opposite, Elizabeth Piggott. And Elizabeth Piggott was about 4 years older than Byron. She was like an elder sister to him. And she was writing poetry. And Byron said to her, "Oh, I write poetry." "Oh," she said, "do you? Well, bring some of it and show me." Which he did. And that was the start of him writing here on the first of his 4 books. And one of her relatives came in and said, "Young Byron, that poetry you've written, you can have it printed in book form in a nearby town called Newark-on-Trent, where Mr. Ridge is a very good printer, and he will print your books." So that was a very significant moment, I think, in Byron's time here. That was, if you like, the spark that got him writing.
Excellent, thank you. And could you tell us about the process of gathering these images and any particularly memorable discoveries? And your book also includes unpublished material and historic imagery. How did this happen? Can you tell us a little bit about the process?
First of all, I've got a lot of research over 30 years plus, and I have a library of over 1,400 books by or about Byron. So I've got a lot of material to go at. But in my research, we knew little about Byron's early days in Aberdeen, where he lived for the first 10 years. Very pleased through getting in touch with the Aberdeen Town Council and their archives to find a photograph that I don't think has ever been in a book before, showing what was Byron's house on Queen Street in Aberdeen when he lived there with his mother as a small boy. And it was material like that that made the whole thing exciting. The other thing is that I discovered there were quite a lot of poems Byron wrote that he never published in any of his first 4 books he wrote here, and they had never been published in a book. A very good friend of mine, the late Dr. Peter Cochrane, had collated these poems, and I was able to get access to them and have permission to put them in the back of my book. So you are getting poems by Byron that have never been seen before or printed before. And also some of my own collection, for example, the locket, which Miss Piggott gave to Byron, with his eye painted, just his right eye, and a lock of his hair. Real treasures, which nobody else has had or seen, and a book by a Portuguese poet, Louis Comench, which Byron in 1806 gave to Miss Piggott, saying that it was his personal gift to her, and she replied in verse to that. And these things haven't been seen before until they were published in my book.
So why do you think Byron is often celebrated for his later works and personal, whereas you focus on his formative years?
Yes.
Why do you think this period is often overlooked?
Well, I think because it's called, his first 4 books, which were written here and published in New York, are called his juvenilia. They were written by him when he was very immature. And of course, it wasn't until he wrote Cantos 1 and 2 of Childe Harold, published in 1813, that he became, if you like, famous overnight. So I think it's simply that people haven't really given much thought to the fact that when did Byron start writing his poetry? And my book is really centered on that, dear reader, Byron's poetry started here in Burgage Manor in Southall around 1806, 1807. Of course, it was in the terms of the whole canon of Byron's work, very minor and very, as I've said, juvenile, and wasn't to be compared with Don Juan, Childe Harold, and his later great works.
Geoffrey, your earlier book, Dangerous to Show, focused on images of Lord Byron. How does Byron's manor build on or differ from your previous work about him?
Well, I think that both books have one thing in common. They covered subjects that had not really been covered before. Amazing though it is, after all these years, other than a rather academic piece, which was just a list of pictures of Byron by Annette Peach, nobody had done the definitive work on Byron's paintings and sculptures. And Christine and I researched that over quite a number of years. And that book is now the definitive work on Byron portraiture and is the go-to book. Similarly, my book, recently, Byron's Manor, is new and covers new ground, talking about Byron's first work. So they share that in common, and they come from a similar background of people like me and Christine Kane-Jones wanting to tell the reader about these areas that were overlooked, if you like.
Do you happen to have it by your side? So can we have a look at the cover? Can you tell us more about the cover? Oh, right. Yes.
Well, the cover shows you in the background my house as it looks today. And behind this window here, Miss Piggott tells us that was the window where Byron worked, and that was his bedroom, where I have my Byron collection. And this picture here is from, well, it's an original painting by a colleague of mine, but it's a copy of a famous painting of Byron as a young man when he was 19, venturing up into the world. And he's got with him his dog, Bosun, one of his famous Newfoundland dogs. So that's the front cover. And then inside, we go inside, there's a very interesting picture here. This picture here shows you me working in the Byron room. That's the Byron room, part of it, and me at work. And I think that's quite an interesting picture. Not many authors are able to do that. And there's some pictures of my house, the great hall, and things of that nature, which would be of interest to people. And then we've got, of course, pictures of Newstead Abbey and Harrow School. This is Harrow School, and Byron appearing in Speech Day at Harrow School. This on the left has never been published before. That's very new and very rare. So the book has quite a lot of new areas. Here's a good idea of what my library looks like. And
beautiful. Amazing. It's really amazing.
It's a very well-designed book. That's one of Byron's first girlfriends, Mary Chorworth, who rather upset him, which I won't go into. And so the book is beautifully designed by my colleague, Nick McCann, who I've worked with on a lot of Byron subjects over the last 30 years. We've made short films together about Byron and done a lot of things together. So Nick was a perfect chap to design my book for me.
I mean, I can say even, from the screen that it's also a good quality book.
Oh,
Even
yes.
the papers, I can tell that, you know,
It
and
says,
the glossy papers.
yes, it was printed in Czechoslovakia. They are very
Oh.
good. And the design is lovely. And a lot of people keep saying to me, it's the perfect coffee table book. Not sure if
No,
that's
it's really good.
that's the Greek helmet on the back. And of course, it has inside comments from a lot of distinguished Byronists saying what they think of the book. So you can read what people think of the book. And we have a very,
The reviews.
yes, we have a very famous author here in England called Gilly Cooper. She's quite famous for her books on television, and she's written a lovely piece about my book.
Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I mean, I can tell it's a really nice book, the presentation, what is written. And as you said, many things, you know, were written for first time. So it's
Yes.
excellent. Now, as longer time advocate for heritage and culture, how do you hope Byron Manor contributes to keeping Byron's legacy alive for new generations?
Oh, well, of course, many of my friends wish me to leave this house with its collections to the nation.
Okay. Oh,
That's not a very easy thing to do.
no, it's not.
We have something called a national trust, which takes on houses for the nation and runs them right into the future. But for that to happen, the National Trust has to have what we call an endowment to go with the gift of the house. And an endowment for a house like this would probably be about £2 million. So what I am doing at the moment, based on this book, which is causing a lot of interest in this part of the country, I'm having meetings with people over the next weeks about promoting Byron much more than we have in the past. Because as I've said to the people of Nottinghamshire, you have had living amongst you in the early 19th century one of the most famous men in Europe of his day, as famous as Napoleon. And you should make much more of him, for example, as if nothing else, as a tourist attraction. And you should put him as an arrow in your tourist quiver. And so we are also going to try and find a place, a premises, which I've always wanted to do, which we can turn into a small Byron interpretation and show people about Byron and put some of my collections in and things of that nature, which would be very nice because we now have museums, of course, in Messalongi, in Newstead Abbey, and in on the east coast of Italy in Ravenna. So it would be very nice if we could have something here as well.
And if I'm not mistaken, you would like to visit Messalongi.
Oh, I have. Yes, I visited Messalongi before.
Oh, you've been to Messalongi. Okay.
I've swum in the lagoon.
Oh, amazing.
Messalongi about 15 years ago, and I've given Messalongi Museum objects and paintings because I support Rosa Flora in the museum. I think it's very good. I'd love to go back again, and it's just a matter of flying to Athens and getting that long journey from Athens out to Messalongi. But I think it's a lovely museum, and Rosa and her friends have made a wonderful job of it. And of course, you may not have seen it, but the new museum in Ravenna, which is in the house that was the Palazzo Guiccioli, in which Byron's last mistress lived, is also very attractive and very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm tempting, you know, I'm aiming to also go to Messalongi because I haven't been, and after listening to what you told us today and just now, definitely I would like to, and I have an invitation from Rosa as well, so.
You must go. You must
yes,
go.
I must go. So your book, where can we find it,
Messalongi.
Your book.
Oh, my book, sorry.
Yes,
my book.
okay. You're right. We are talking about Messalongi.
My book is available on Amazon. So if you go on to Amazon and type in Byron's Manor, my book will come up and it's available for purchase there. And you'll find all the details about it.
Fantastic. Anything you would like to add? And now, you're such an interesting person. You have a great knowledge, and you've been on BBC as well. And I'd like to ask you 100 questions, but it's impossible. So I will give you the opportunity to say what you wish before.
I'm hoping this book will help to increase the good relations between this country and Greece. I hope it will help to perhaps in one way or another let us get over Byron's poem, The Curse of Minerva. Do you know that poem?
No.
Oh, well, The Curse
Please
of Minerva.
Tell me more.
The Curse of Minerva, Byron wrote when he criticised heavily Lord Elgin, who was a British aristocrat who took the Parthenon marbles back to London.
Okay.
So we hope for a diplomatic and peaceful solution to that. And I hope we can build up scholarship and education with young people between Greece and our own country. I think it's very good for diplomatic relations, having cultural connections. And if I can do anything to help in that way, I will do so.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Geoffrey. It was a real pleasure having you with us, and we wish you all the best with your book. I'm sure many would love to have it in the library,
But if anybody has any trouble getting it, they just get in touch with me, or any queries from our conversation today, do get in touch with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you and speaking with you.
Thank you. And what is your website, Geoffrey?
My website is Geoffrey Bond, that's Geoffrey, GeoffreyBondBooks.com. GeoffreyBondBooks.com is my website. So as I say, I hope we meet again and have...
I hope so too. It'll be a real pleasure. And thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for having us. It was a memorable, evening. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, εμείς θα τα πούμε και πάλι πολύ σύντομα με ένα καινούριο φιλοξενούμενο και ένα καινούριο θέμα. Καλό βράδυ.